We all see them, right? Those friendly faces zipping up and down the aisle,
Mhm.
offering drinks, snacks, a reassuring smile.
Right, yeah.
But let's be honest. How often do we actually stop and think about what it really takes to be a flight attendant?
I mean, beyond just like, the serving part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This isn't about the beverage cart. This is about conflict resolution.
Buckle up, folks.
We're going deep into the hidden world of flight attendant training. We've got some juicy excerpts from their actual manuals, and trust me,
Oh, yeah.
you might be surprised by what they have to be prepared for.
Definitely. Like, imagine, right, you're a flight attendant, you've just hit cruising altitude.
Finally, time to relax.
Uh-huh, right. Then suddenly, boom, a passenger goes off.
Too many mini bottles of wine.
Maybe, or just having a full-on meltdown. It happens. So what happens next? It's not just about calming them down, is it?
You mean there's more to it than just saying, "Sir, please calm down"?
Way more. Flight attendants are trained to assess the situation so quickly. Think about it. They have to consider the passenger's behavior. Are they a threat? Are there legal things to worry about?
So it's kind of like they have to be part-time air marshals too?
Kinda, yeah. One thing that really jumped out at me in these manuals was all the de-escalation techniques. They learned specific phrases, even body language to try to, like, diffuse a tense situation.
Wow. Like what? Give me an example.
Sure. They might offer choices like, would you like to move to another seat? Or would you prefer to stay here and relax? It gives the passenger a feeling of, control.
That's actually pretty smart.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just telling them what to do.
Mm.
But what if, even with all that training, things get out of hand? What then? What kind of safety protocols kick in?
It can get intense, right? I mean, there are procedures for restraining someone if it becomes absolutely necessary.
No way.
Yeah, and they're drilled on those techniques. Plus, think about it, they have to be aware of, like, weapons.
Oh, gosh.
And how to disarm someone safely.
It's amazing how much responsibility they have. And this is all happening at 30,000 feet. It makes those tiny bags of pretzels seem a little, well,
Uh-huh, yeah.
underwhelming. Okay, well, let's talk about another big source of conflict.
Okay.
Overhead bin space.
Oh, the dreaded bins.
We've all seen it, right? People cramming bags in, families separated because someone decided to put their winter coat in the bin.
Yeah.
Total chaos.
Oh, it can get ugly.
How on earth do flight attendants even begin to manage that?
It's a delicate dance. They have to be diplomats, but also firm.
Yeah.
Enforce the airline's rules fairly, but still try to make everyone kind of happy.
Sounds impossible.
Sometimes it's about offering alternatives, like, hey, we can check that bag at the gate for you. Other times it's just gently reminding everyone, look, we're all in this cramped space together.
It's like they need a psychology degree on top of everything else. But seriously, what happens if someone just flat out refuses to cooperate?
Well, they do have authority, They can deny boarding to someone being disruptive or unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
They can even request, like, law enforcement to meet the plane when it lands.
That's good to know. All right, let's lighten the mood a bit. What about those service complaints? I know I've definitely been, let's say, less than thrilled with the
culinary delights.
exactly, or the entertainment options. But I always try to remember, it's not the flight attendant's fault. How do they deal with that?
It's a good point, right? They're the face of the airline, so sometimes they get the brunt of it. Training really emphasizes listening skills and empathy. Even if it's something as minor as a broken headphone jack.
Acknowledge the person's feelings.
Exactly. Sometimes a genuine apology, a warm smile, it can go a long way.
So strong communication skills and a whole lot of patience.
Basically, yes.
What's the one thing you think our listeners should remember after this deep dive into the world of flight attendants?
I think it's easy to forget, as passengers, how much goes on behind the scenes that we never even see. They're not just serving drinks.
They are mediators, safety officers, and sometimes even like therapists.
They really are. So the next time you're flying, take a second to appreciate the unseen work they're doing.
Absolutely.
To make sure everyone has a smooth and safe flight. Maybe even offer them a smile. A thank you.
Oh yeah, for sure. A little kindness goes a long way.
It does.
Especially up in the air.
Until next time, happy flying, everyone.
Safe travels. All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Our topic today is flight attendants.
Yeah.
And not just like the, glamorous jet-setting side of it. We're going to be looking at some of the sources that you all sent in about some of the tougher parts of the job.
Right.
The stuff that most people don't even really think about when they think about flight attendants.
Exactly.
And the sources we have are pretty diverse.
Yeah, we got a great mix.
A lot of different perspectives.
Yeah,
So let's just dive right in.
that's good.
And we'll start with something I think a lot of people have experienced,
Okay.
and that's turbulence.
Right.
And, you're sitting there, maybe trying to enjoy a drink or a meal or whatever, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you hit a rough patch.
Things start shaking.
Drinks go flying sometimes.
Exactly.
But, a lot of passengers don't think about what's going on, behind the scenes
Right.
when that happens.
Yeah, for flight attendants, it's a whole different ballgame.
Right. We're not just worried about spilling our own drinks. We're responsible for the safety of everyone on board.
Yeah. I remember this one time.
Oh, yeah.
We hit a patch of clear air turbulence. And, it came out of nowhere.
Oh,
It was so bad that a service cart flew up and hit the ceiling.
Oh, my gosh. Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. It was crazy. People were screaming. It was total chaos.
I bet.
In that situation, you just got to stay calm.
Really?
Focus on making sure everyone's safe.
Yeah.
Get people back in their seats. Make sure they have their seatbelts on.
Yeah, and you gotta project that calmness too, right?
Exactly. You can't let the passengers see you panicking.
Right.
You got to be the voice of authority.
Right.
Reassure them that everything's going to be okay, even if you're not sure yourself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you got to be able to adapt, depending on how bad the turbulence is.
Right.
Sometimes a firm voice is all it takes,
Yeah.
just to get people's attention. But sometimes you got to be more assertive. If someone's really freaking out and putting others at risk,
Right.
you got to be able to take control of the situation.
And it sounds like, based on some of these sources, that flight attendants actually get a lot of training for that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We go through rigorous training to handle all sorts of emergencies.
Right.
Turbulence is just one of them.
I know.
We have to be prepared for anything.
So what are some of the other, emergencies that you train for?
Well, medical emergencies are a big one.
Oh, sure.
People get sick on planes all the time.
Yeah.
Anything from a simple headache to, something more serious like a heart attack.
Yeah.
And you got to be ready to deal with it.
Yeah.
We have a first aid kit and some basic medical equipment,
Yeah.
but it's not like we have a full-fledged hospital up there.
Right.
So you got to think fast, assess the situation.
Yeah.
Provide basic care, and if necessary, contact medical professionals on the ground.
Yeah.
Or, sometimes we'll even ask if there's a doctor on board.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how often there is.
Yeah. I guess it makes sense statistically speaking.
Yeah.
I've always wondered, what's the protocol for that?
Well, we'll just make an announcement,
Yeah.
that ask, is there any medical personnel on board who are willing to assist?
Right.
And, it's always a huge relief when a doctor or nurse steps forward.
Yeah, I bet.
They can provide a level of care that we just can't.
Yeah, and that can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
In a life or death situation.
Exactly.
And it sounds like the training for medical emergencies is pretty intense too.
Oh, yeah. It's very comprehensive.
Yeah.
We learn CPR, first aid, basic life support,
Right.
how to use all sorts of medical equipment,
Wow.
oxygen tanks, defibrillators, you name it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. We even learn how to assess vital signs, identify symptoms, and provide appropriate care based on the situation.
Wow. So you're basically like a mini doctor up there.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but we do our best, to be prepared for anything.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So we've talked about turbulence. We've talked about medical emergencies.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about something that I think everyone's familiar with,
Okay.
but maybe doesn't always pay attention to.
Right.
And that's the safety briefing.
Oh, yeah.
That little demonstration they do at the beginning of every flight.
Right.
Showing you how to put on your oxygen mask and where the exits are.
Exactly.
I'll admit, I've definitely tuned it out a few times.
Yeah, I think we all have.
But, it's important information.
It is. It really is.
In an emergency situation, that stuff could save your life.
Absolutely.
But, I imagine it's got to be tough for flight attendants
Yeah.
to try to get people to pay attention.
It is. It's a real challenge.
Everyone's tired. They just want to relax. They've heard it all before.
Exactly. And, a lot of people just don't think it's going to happen to them.
Right.
They think it's all just a formality. But we got to make them understand that it's serious.
Right.
We got to make it engaging. We got to make it memorable.
So how do you do that?
Well, we try to be clear and concise.
Yeah.
avoid using too much jargon,
Right.
use simple language that everyone can understand. And we
Yeah.
try to make eye contact with people, smile, be friendly.
Right.
And sometimes we'll even inject a little bit of humor,
Oh, sure.
just to keep people's attention.
I mean, it can't hurt.
Right? Exactly.
And I've noticed that some flight attendants will actually ask questions.
Oh, yeah, that's a good technique.
Yeah.
It gets people thinking, it gets them involved.
Yeah. Makes it more interactive.
Exactly.
So you're not just talking at them, you're
Right.
actually engaging with them.
Exactly.
And the safety briefing covers the basics, like, oxygen masks and life vests.
Right.
But what about more complicated procedures?
Yeah.
Like, the difference between an emergency landing on land versus a water landing.
Right.
How do you make sure people understand that?
Well, for those kinds of things, we rely a lot on the safety card.
Oh, sure.
The one in the seat pocket.
The
Exactly. We'll point out the key differences, like the brace position for each type of landing.
Right.
And we'll really emphasize the importance of listening to the crew's instructions during an emergency.
Right.
Because the specific steps might vary depending on the situation.
Right.
We might have to evacuate through the front exits or the rear exits.
Yeah.
We might have to use the slides or the rafts.
Yeah.
It all depends on what's happening.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a lot of responsibility,
Oh, yeah, we do.
to make sure everyone stays safe.
It's a big job, but someone's got to do it.
Right.
And we take it very seriously.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights.
It was my pleasure.
And I think, for everyone listening, next time you're on a flight,
Yeah.
maybe take a second to think about all the hard work that flight attendants do to
Right.
keep you safe.
Yeah.
They're not just there to serve drinks and snacks.
Yeah, exactly.
They're trained professionals who are prepared to handle all sorts of emergencies.
That's right.
And, maybe actually pay attention to that safety briefing.
Yeah. It could save your life.
All right, everyone. That's all the time we have for today.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See ya.
Now, I got to admit, I never thought I'd be so grateful to hear that fasten your seatbelt sign. But after hearing all of that,
Right.
makes you really appreciate those folks looking out for us up there.
Yeah, they deserve a lot of credit.
Absolutely. And you know what else I was thinking about?
What's that?
What about all the other people who work behind the scenes to keep us safe?
Oh, yeah.
The air traffic controllers, the mechanics, the ground crew.
It's a whole team effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe we should do a deep dive on all those folks sometime.
I'd be up for that.
Yeah, I think that would be fascinating.
All right, well, let's do it.
Sounds good. We'll talk to y'all next time.
See ya.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yes.
Today, we are going to be looking at a world that I think we all experience pretty regularly, but I think most of us don't really give a lot of thought to,
Right.
and that is the world of in-flight service. We're going to be looking at what flight attendants actually do. I think a lot of times we have this kind of vision of them as, smiling faces, handing out snacks and drinks. But I think the reality is that it's probably a little more complex than that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a lot more than just, kind of the friendly service that you see. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, to keep passengers happy and fed at 30,000 feet.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be looking at today is sort of what goes on behind the curtain, while we're all sitting there watching our movies or reading our books or, trying to get some sleep, what's going on back there in the galley. So we have some sources here that we're going to be referencing that really kind of go into a lot of detail about exactly, what flight attendants do, what their responsibilities are, and, some of the challenges that they face.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that surprised me the most, researching this is just how demanding the job really is. I mean, we think about it as, kind of a glamorous job, jet setting around the world and, but it's a lot of hard work and it requires a lot of skill.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It definitely doesn't seem like it's all, glitz and glamour.
Right.
So I guess maybe a good place to start would be to kind of like outline the main tasks, the main areas of responsibility for flight attendants. So what are we kind of looking at here?
So the sources highlight three main areas: offering food and drinks, handling special meal requests, and dealing with dietary restrictions.
Okay, so those are the kind of the three main buckets that we're working with here. And each of these, I imagine, comes with its own unique set of challenges, just given the environment that, flight attendants are working in.
For sure.
Um, so why don't we just kind of go through each of these one by one and sort of break them down a little bit?
Yeah, sounds good.
So let's start with food and drinks.
Mm.
I think we've all had our experiences with airplane food.
Right.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. But I'm curious, from a logistical standpoint, like what is involved in actually preparing and serving all those meals at 30,000 feet?
Well, you have to consider that they're trying to prepare food and drinks for, sometimes hundreds of people
Yeah.
in a tiny little galley, and it's not like they have all the time in the world.
Right.
They have to do it within a pretty tight time frame.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And while the plane is moving.
Oh, the plane's moving.
So, yeah, there are definitely some challenges there.
So it's not as simple as like, just tossing a bunch of frozen dinners in the microwave.
No, not at all. They have to use a variety of equipment, ovens, hot water dispensers, and they have to follow very specific procedures for preparing each meal type
Oh, wow.
to make sure that everything is cooked properly and safe to eat.
So, I mean, are they like, trained chefs, or are they just like, really good at following instructions?
Well, they do receive training on food preparation and safety,
Okay.
but, they're not chefs,
Right.
but they are really good at following instructions and working under pressure.
Right.
Because, they have to deal with a lot of different things at once. They might be, trying to heat up meals and serve drinks at the same time and deal with, passenger requests.
So, I mean, how do they keep track of everything? I
Yeah.
mean, like, if there's, 200 people on a flight and, 100 of them want chicken and, 50 of them want pasta and, there's all these different, drinks and snacks and things like that. How do they make sure that, they're not running out of stuff or, they're not giving the wrong meal to the wrong person?
Well, it's all about inventory management. So they have a very specific system for tracking every single meal, snack, and drink.
Oh.
They have to count everything before the flight.
Yeah.
And then they have to keep track of what's been served and what's left.
Okay.
And then they have to make sure that they have enough for everyone and that they're not wasting anything.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's like running a small restaurant in the sky.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And, sometimes you have to deal with turbulence,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
which can make things even more challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Trying to keep everything from spilling and, make sure that everyone is safe.
So that kind of leads us into the next topic,
Mm-hmm.
which is special meal requests and dietary restrictions.
Yes.
I think, in today's world, there's so many different, dietary needs and preferences.
Right.
And, it seems like airlines are doing a better job of accommodating those.
Never.
But I'm curious to know, like, what is involved on the flight attendant's end in terms of, like, managing those requests and making sure that, everyone gets what they need.
Well, the first thing is that they have to be aware of all the different types of special meals that are available.
Okay.
So they have to be trained on that.
Right.
And then they have to be able to identify the passengers who have requested special meals,
Okay.
and make sure that they get the right meal.
Right.
And then they also have to be aware of any potential allergens,
Right. Yeah. That's really important.
especially if a passenger has a severe allergy.
Yeah.
They need to make sure that that passenger's meal doesn't come into contact with anything that could trigger an allergic reaction.
Yeah. So it's not just about, like, giving someone a vegetarian meal or something like that. It's also about, like, making sure that it's prepared separately and that it's not, contaminated with anything that could be harmful.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, it really is.
And, it's not always easy to keep track of everything, especially when you're dealing with a full flight,
Right.
and things can get hectic.
Yeah.
But, flight attendants are trained to handle these situations, and they do a great job.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really impressive.
Yeah.
When you think about all the things that they're juggling.
Right.
And they're always, trying to be professional and courteous and, helpful.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we should all, really appreciate.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think, we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
We've talked about, the main responsibilities of flight attendants.
Right.
We've talked about some of the challenges that they face.
Yes.
And I think it's really just given me a whole new appreciation for, what goes into, providing that in-flight service.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, I think, next time I'm on a flight, I'm definitely going to be a little more patient and understanding.
Yeah, I think we all should be.
And maybe I'll even say thank you to the flight attendant.
That's a good idea. I think they would appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, I think this deep dive into in-flight service leaves us with a really interesting question.
Okay.
What other hidden complexities might exist in seemingly ordinary jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question to think about.
So until next time, stay curious.
Keep on diving.